Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. Thomas Vick here, joined by my co-host Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It is just a beautiful sunny day out. Had the opportunity over lunch to actually walk around a little bit of downtown here, and we walked to the restaurant where we ate. So just nice to be outside a little bit, get refreshed, see people out and about. And I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time in my office or working on a computer screen, and it's nice to have a change of scenery.
I enjoy being outside as much as possible because I'm often inside. So I definitely hear you on that. I thought today we might take the opportunity to talk about some developments in law office technology, in particular artificial intelligence, and some of the developments that we're seeing in the practice and how some of these AI tools can help us practice law better, but also what are some things that we need to be aware of and plan for and that kind of thing. So I'll just kind of start there, Seth. We've talked about AI in the past, but AI is a constantly developing topic, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years. So at this point, it's July 9th, 2026, when we are recording this. What are you seeing as far as AI is concerned in the law practice?
Yeah, you're looking at just an incredible potential from the tool set, and I think an incredible concern, rightfully so, about what is the AI doing? What data does it have access to? Can you use it in an ethical manner as an attorney under your our rules of professional conduct? I mean, there's just so much uncertainty around it. It kind of reminds me of back in the mid 2000s where the topic of the day was cloud computing and oh goodness, could you use a service like Dropbox, and was that going to put client files at risk? And we've watched that continuum develop since that time to where almost everything now is technically cloud computing and it sort of became the mainstream. And I think that's kind of where I'm seeing things with the AI tools that are available, where initially there was a lot of concern about them, and rightfully so. And there still is that level of concern, but some of the structure is starting to develop around the use of those tools and the guardrails that you can utilize to help protect and eliminate some of the risk that can be associated with using those tools. Obviously, there's a lot of reported cases out there now on lawyers over relying on the technology and allowing it to do work for the lawyer without probably much oversight, which is what tends to get lawyers in trouble when you file a brief in front of a court that has a case that doesn't exist, right? A hallucinated site. And so I think that continuum continues to develop, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we're starting to get to a point where these tools are actually going to be at a point where we can use them well inside of our practices.
Yeah, I think it's only been 2, maybe 3 years since I really became familiar with the idea of ChatGPT. I didn't even know that ChatGPT existed before, like 2023, maybe even 2024. And now ChatGPT is like, used as much as Google probably. I mean, people talk to ChatGPT about how to go on vacations and how to, dress for a certain occasion. They use it for all kinds of advice, and it's a common feature. So I think that, the same is probably true for attorneys, that attorneys are becoming more and more comfortable at this point in 2026 with the idea of using AI. And, you know, I think it's, in my opinion, the technology has developed so that AI is more useful than it used to be 2 or 3 years ago. And you can actually get fairly accurate information from AI, whereas, it may have been a little bit more difficult to rely on that kind of research or information that AI was producing. And so I think attorneys are becoming more comfortable with it. They're seeing how it can help them become more efficient in the law practice. And maybe we can kind of talk through some ways that we have found AI to be helpful. And I'll lead off with just the fact that it can do legal research for you. And it can, you can send it a query and it will start researching, and it'll pull up cases and statutes and kind of come up with a position that, your client would want you to have, and kind of support that position. And maybe it will give you some weaknesses to the argument and that kind of thing. But the way that I think about it is you're really using it kind of as a secondary source, and you check your secondary sources, but then you take the citations from the secondary source and you go to the authoritative source, the statute and the case, and there you put your law school training to work, and you make sure that everything lines up with the research that AI has provided to you. But I think that the great thing about that is that you get to that point a lot quicker, the point where you're checking sources a lot quicker than, trying to find the secondary source to get the information and then go from there. So that's the way that I've found it to be helpful.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an important distinction in terms of what type of AI tool or system that you're going to use. So, in the legal research context, you have a closed system where the database contains all of the primary sources and secondary sources and those kind of things. But the AI tool, if you subscribe to the right level for your office, is going to be limited to that data set. So it can't go out and pull things necessarily off the internet and create a case that may have existed in Law and Order, but never existed in real life, which is what sometimes happens if you're using a non or an open system, a non-closed or an open system. And so I think that's a really big, important thing to keep in mind. But the legal research aspect of AI and the tools that are available are really incredible and so helpful as you kind of offload some of that work of maybe it's just a refresher on a particular area of law that you're looking at doing. And you can walk through that area very quickly using that AI prompt and make sure that you're, as you said, Thomas, checking those primary and secondary sources.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great way of using AI, using it for legal research purposes. Another way to use AI that I found to be helpful is note taking. And I'm sure a lot of people have been on Zoom calls with an AI note taker, or some other device on a video call is recording. But then there are also, some note taking devices that you can purchase, like Claude, or Plaud, I mean Plaud, that will record the conversation and then provide a summary of the conversation or the client meeting with you. And I have found that to be very, very helpful. And we can kind of talk about client consent necessary for that kind of thing. I found that to be a great way to not only take notes, but also to provide a summary to the client of what we talked about, because a lot of times clients will have a great conversation with you and they will walk away and not remember 90% of what you told them, and not the reasoning why you told them to do what they're supposed to do. And so sending follow-up emails to them saying, hey, we talked about this is what the next action step is, has been really helpful to me. And clients have appreciated having that resource.
Yeah, and with that consent to use it, a lot of the clients are interested to see what the tool will generate. And based on your recollection and their recollection and your notes and their notes, it really helps define, hey, these are the items we've discussed. This is the scope of representation that we've agreed to. Here's the timeline. And it allows for a wide ranging conversation focused on answering the client's questions rather than trying to write everything down so you don't forget it later. And the summary tools are really good at highlighting, hey, you need to follow up on these kind of points, or you didn't really answer this question fully, or you're missing this piece of information that you requested. And so it can be a really helpful tool to just organize your thoughts, your notes, and then allow you to move forward effectively with the representation. And then another tool that I really like on top of the Plod recording type tools is the whisper-based dictation that is AI driven. And I use one called WhisperFlow. It's WISPR. And I think you use it as well, Thomas. But it's one of those tools that allows me to dictate into my computer and have text show up on screen in whatever app that I'm using. And so, I'm a fairly quick typist, but it's super at the end of the day to just have the ability to talk to my computer and have words appear on the screen. So for billing entries or entering calendar events or even quick text messages with my family throughout the day, it's really a helpful tool.
Yeah, I have found Whisper Flow to be a tremendous advantage to me in getting things accomplished. You can, one feature about Whisper Flow is that you're able to dictate to it and it can figure out if you're saying, or if you need to make a correction to what you said. So like, dear John, and then you're like, oh no, I mean, dear Bob. And it won't just dictate or transcribe all of what you said. It'll have the correct name there that you wanted. And so that has been really helpful to me and has allowed for me to get messages out a lot quicker. I can, there are some mornings where I come into the office and, I'm just talking to myself through Whisper Flow to all, sending messages to everybody on my team, like, hey, follow up with this person, this is what's going on in this case. And so it helps that process to go a lot quicker. Whereas if I were typing it, it'd take me a longer period of time. I have noticed this, and this is kind of a strange phenomena. I've always prided myself on being a good speller, and I'm not typing as much. I'm certainly not writing as much as I used to, And so for this guy that won the sixth grade class spelling bee, I'm unfortunately noticing that I'm misspelling words that are easy to spell. And so that's kind of my observation. Like, you need to be aware of kind of the human side of what it's doing to you and not, maybe compensate for that in some other way. Maybe you need to do some journal writing or something like that to make sure that your mind stays strong. But the Whisper Flow feature has been awesome.
Yeah, what a great point, Thomas, because there is so much stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis electronically. And it's great that you have, I mean, everybody's probably experienced the predictive text on their smartphone, where you start typing a few characters and a word or a phrase appears and you can tap it to select. The tools are getting there to where it almost feels like the AI is reading your mind and knows where you want to go, but it's just pattern recognition, right? And I think there is so much value to doing things like taking notes with a physical pen and paper, writing in your journal, doing different things to make sure that you are exercising those mental muscles. And does tomorrow have two M's or one M? It's like all those things
I'm
are
starting to
so.
question it,
That's right. That's right. And when I write with my pen, it doesn't autocorrect and fix it for me. Even in Microsoft, you're starting to see that where if you type a typographical error because you're typing too fast, it will fix it in line for you. And so you may not even notice because you're going so fast that it actually fixed the and that you put ADN, and it fixed it because it knew it was supposed to be AN. So again, there's some benefit to that, but then there's also that cognitive challenge I think that's going to come as well, or the over reliance on that tool. And I think another thing for me personally that I've noticed is I speak more in passive voice and I typically write or type more in active voice. And so I have to be aware of that as I'm trying to write something because I can switch those modes if I start dictating halfway through a motion versus typing halfway through the motion. And so just being aware of those little things and my own idiosyncrasies that come as a result of that, and being, I think, self-aware enough to know, yeah, why can't I spell anymore? It's really
Yeah.
an important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Another advantage of AI, I'll throw this one out there. This one is a little bit probably more common, but using AI to catch up on email and identifying what needs to be responded to and what you probably need to know, but you don't necessarily need to respond to. That has been helpful. The Microsoft Copilot has that feature in Outlook that has been helpful to me on occasion. And so that's something to be aware of and to use that feature in Copilot as well.
Yeah, and I really like some of the Copilot features, and I actually wrote an article on this for the Indiana Lawyer in the context of Microsoft Word and Copilot. And I've talked with some colleagues who really like using Copilot as a spell check and grammar check sort of after the fact to go through the document and make sure that you have all your tenses correct and your spelling correct and different things. And with all AI, it requires lots of iterations. So you can't just rely on the first thing that happens, but you have to coach it and make it helpful for you. But the way I like Copilot and Outlook is just to get an idea of some of the objective data that may have happened throughout the week. So, how many emails did I receive this week? How many emails have I sent this week? And Copilot can quickly build those searches, which I used to do manually, but required several clicks and selecting date ranges and doing different things. And now you can just tell the tool what you want to know, and it will go kind of behind the scenes and do all the things that it needs to do to present the information to you. And so, very helpful just to kind of get an idea of, boy, I felt like I did a lot of work this week. What was driving that? Was it all the emails? Was it all the phone calls? Those kind of things. And you can use these tools to help sort of quantify that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, I think it's a wonderful time to practice law. I think I've said that quite a bit over the years on the podcast, but it just keeps getting more and more fun. It allows you to have more opportunities to speak with clients and communicate with clients effectively, and to reinforce your communications with clients in a way that will be memorable for the client. And so I think it's a wonderful tool. I think people need to, adopt it into their law practice, but then also think about all of your ethical obligations. So just like you have to, back when I was getting started, it was a whole big deal that you've got to get the client to consent to email. So that is in my engagement letter still to this day. Put all of your AI devices that you use into the engagement letter so that they are, out in the open. The client understands that you're using these artificial intelligence tools, and then get their consent to it, informed consent. And, obviously do your due diligence on making sure that the AI tools that are using are closed systems so that you're not going to, inadvertently put your client information out into the ether for the whole world to see. Be very selective on, the AI chats that you use and what information you put into those chats to make sure that they're not exposing your client information to the world at large. Those are some of the questions that you need to be asking yourself.
Yeah, and keep in mind that it's becoming industry standard. I mean, if you look at what each of the technology companies are doing and what offerings they have and what you likely have if you subscribe to Office 365 or Clio or one of those practice management systems that are out there, this is becoming the world in which we live. And so you need to understand how it works and how to use it well and educate your clients on it, because your clients are likely using it. They may be taking what you give them and running it through AI and say, hey, translate whatever this is in a way that I can understand it. And or they're drawing or dropping their documents into AI and having it created and asking you to review and approve those. And so you're going to need to understand how this stuff works so that you can identify it when you see it, address it if you need to with the client and say, hey, help me understand how you got here. And a lot of times they'll sheepishly tell you, well, I put it in Chat GPT or what have you, which is fine. You just need to know where it came from, just like it has always been, because it's probably pulling from a number of law-related websites, blogs by lawyers, but they could be different jurisdictions. It could have provisions in a contract that don't apply in your jurisdiction. And so you just need to understand where it is, how it's being used, how to leverage it appropriately. And again, Thomas, I think your discussion there on the risks and how to make sure you're using it in an appropriate way are very well taken.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, clients are becoming more informed prior to that initial consultation because they are researching on ChatGPT or Claude or what have you. They might have found you from ChatGPT or Claude or some other AI search engine or what have you. And so they're coming prepared, and I think there's a higher expectation for meeting their needs because of the research that they've put into it. And I've seen folks that come in, and this is kind of a word of warning. I've seen folks come in that have done some research into their estate planning, which is my practice area, and they're off base. They say, I need this kind of trust, or I need this kind of power of attorney, or what have you, and it's not at all what they actually need, in my opinion. So they're more informed, but they can also be misled, which is one reason why we kind of let off the discussion here with, you've got to check your sources. It can help you, but you've got to go to the sources. It kind of reminds me of my law school motto, ad fontes, back to the sources. So yeah, and I think having an attorney lead a client through that process and getting to the actual legal answer, a true legal opinion, is irreplaceable. We may think that everybody's going to be able to do their own legal work on their own pro se because of this. I've seen some filings pro se actually recently that look real good. They look very official, but that legal analysis is going to be critical, and that's something that is trained over the course of law school and the practice of law, day in and day out.
Yeah, and like you say, it's a great time to be alive or even to be considering starting a practice because there's so much available, and yet you can't substitute the work it requires to understand the case and to review the documents that are coming in and understand the facts so that you can allow the tools to help you present those facts in an appropriate way for your client. And there's so much great stuff there. I think the temptation is easy to say, well, I'll just rely on the tool set. Well, the tool's only going to be as good as the information you're getting it and the prompts that you're feeding it. And so if you don't know what you're doing around those because you haven't sort of tested the boundaries of what it's capable of, know where it may fall short or where it needs additional coaching or prompting to get to adequate analysis, all of that stuff just comes with time and experience. And so that is the admonition is always to start small with something well, something that if it gives you an answer that doesn't seem quite right, you can interact with it a little bit more to try to get to that answer or understand, boy, maybe this tool isn't quite ready for what I need it to do for my practice. But again, what a great time to be practicing and have all this at the forefront for us. Everybody's trying to figure it out, and I think it is important for lawyers especially to use it well, educate your clients on how it can be used well, make sure that they understand and are aware of its use in your practice if you're doing so, and that they're okay with that because some clients may not be. And you just need to make that clear up front and help them understand that you are there for them as their advocate and as their representative.
Yeah. Well, I have enjoyed the discussion today, Seth. We encourage everybody that is listening to the podcast to follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there, Lifetime Legacy Lawyers channel, where you can get all this content where we talk about law practice management and starting a law office and all that kind of good stuff. And also email us at thomas@lifetimelegacylawyers.com, Seth at lifetimelegacylawyers.com. Also have a website, which is it lifetimelegacylawyers.riverside.com, where a lot of
Yeah,
these videos are.
that's right. And if you go to that domain, it'll forward out to the YouTube channel and all of that. So Yeah, just again, we're probably feeding all these models, with all the stuff we're putting out there on the podcast, but hopefully that's educational for folks and can help you both avoid a problem, but also learn how to overcome maybe a little bit of hesitation to getting involved with these tools that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that will do it for today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Thomas.